The exile that forged us, the stars turned their backs on us. When Earth first broke the light barrier in 2961, it should have been a triumph, a moment where humanity joined the great civilizations of the galaxy. But instead, the Galactic Council issued a decree: humanity was to be banned. Not monitored, not contained, erased. With ruthless precision, they executed their plan. Every human colony beyond the solar system was dismantled. Ships were recalled spaceports. Dismantled and entire outposts left to drift as derelicts in the void, Council warships patrolled the edges of our system. Not to defend, but to quarantine. The message was clear. Earth was diseased, dangerous, unfit for the stars. Trade routes were severed overnight. Diplomatic ties cut with cold indifference. Any species that offered aid was punished. Planets embargoed allies, sanctioned ambassadors, exiled. Earth stood alone. In the chambers of the Council, they called us unstable, aggressive, primitive children with fire in their hands and no understanding of what it meant to hold it. They thought they could scare us into submission, that cutting us off would break us, but fear wasn't what they created. They created something worse: unity. Beneath the pale blue skies of a wounded world, humanity began to change. We adapted as we always have. The luxuries of trade, of comfort, of interstellar exchange all gone. But necessity birthed innovation and isolation. It forged resilience. The cities above withered, but below, deep beneath the earth, massive bunkers came to life. Old mines became research facilities. Abandoned silos became production lines. We built in silence beneath oceans, under ice caps, within asteroid belts. The Council believed they had exiled us. What they did was give us time to rethink everything. We stripped down our ships, redesigned them from the hull up, learned to power reactors with half the fuel, double the output. Our weapons stopped being flashy, no longer beautiful machines of war, but efficient instruments of annihilation. And more than that, we changed ourselves. We pushed human biology beyond limits the Council deemed ethical. Neural interfaces, synthetic limbs, self-healing tissue. Generations were born into darkness, never knowing sunlight. Only simulation, only war drills. They weren't citizens. They were soldiers waiting for a reason. By the year 3062, Earth was no longer a backwater world. It was a forge, a crucible, a dead world reborn into something terrifying. At the edge of the Kuiper Belt, cloaked in the ruins of a mining station once thought abandoned, General Elias Kane stood in the command chamber of the war-born Nexus. Around him, admirals, tacticians, cybernetically enhanced operatives, all watching a single holographic display. A map of the galaxy. Red marks indicated strategic targets, patrol zones, vulnerable trade routes, Council assets. Kane's face was as still as stone, his eyes reflecting the pulsing stars. "We've waited long enough," he said, voice low but resolute. "No more hiding, no more silence." Murmurs spread through the room, nervous, excited, afraid, but no one spoke against him. No one dared. Kane stepped forward and tapped the command interface. Activate Operation Revenant. Across the solar system, hidden fleets came online. Dark silhouettes emerged from craters on the moon, from under the ice of Europa, from deep caverns inside Mars. Ships that didn't exist on any registry. Ships that could bend light, silence, sound, and phase through detection, grids like ghosts. Crews scrambled into formation. AI systems roared to life, weapons that had never been seen. By alien eyes hummed with anticipation. These weren't ships of peace, they were revenants. Echoes of a species the galaxy had tried to bury, but that refused to stay dead. In the silence of space, Earth's vengeance stirred. Operation Revenant unleashed. The silence before the storm was absolute. In the vacuum of space, there was no fanfare, no battle hymn, only the low thrum of reactors igniting, the quiet click of neural uplinks synchronizing across thousands of decks, and the cold mechanical hum of weapon systems warming up after centuries of dormancy. Humanity was not returning to the stars with ambassadors or emissaries. It was returning with warships. The Black Armada emerged, first sleek black-hulled vessels that absorbed light and hope in equal measure. No insignias, no names, only purpose. They slipped through the asteroid belts like phantoms, dozens, becoming hundreds, becoming thousands. They had no home port. They were born in exile, built in silence, forged for vengeance. At their head aboard the dreadnought, Nemesis stood Admiral Nix, a woman as precise as a machine. Her silver eyes scanned the tactical feeds dancing before her, like stars caught in a storm. Her voice calm and sharp cut through the command deck. All systems green, stealth protocols holding. Across the galaxy, Earth's forgotten hand moved unseen. And at the heart of this rising storm was Kane. In the depths of Antarctica, beneath kilometers of ice, the Warborn Command Center thrummed with energy. Massive holographic projections showed live feeds of the Council's outer systems, complacent, unaware, blind. Commander Asha Varma stood at Kane's side, her eyes glowing with blue flickers from her cybernetic implants. She was the blade and the dark leader of the Phantom Division operatives trained to disappear into enemy strongholds and leave behind only blood and questions. The Council's still in the dark, she said, but they're watching the outer roads more closely. Kane didn't look at her. He stared into the map as if willing it to burn. Then it's time we light the match. Varma exchanged a glance with Admiral Nix, who had joined the transmission from orbit. There's a fortress world, Nix said, system Teddy deep in the mid-rim. Heavy garrison core-linked defenses. One of their most secure positions. Kane's eyes narrowed. If we take it, they'll know we're back. Nix gave a slow, deliberate smile. They won't have a choice. The order went out, and across the void, humanity moved. The Black Armada left Titan's shadow with engines silent and hearts burning. Stealth cruisers folded space around them like cloaks. Legionnaire strike ships prepped for deployment. AI battle mines went from dormant to fully active in seconds. Their destination: Tayet T3, the first message, the first reckoning. The Council's fortress world was everything the enemy had designed it to be, an impenetrable bastion floating above a mineral-rich planet, shielded by orbital cannons, sensor nets, planetary defense fields, and a garrison of 10,000 soldiers. But it wasn't built to face this. The attack began not with fire, but with silence. Every comm relay, every surveillance drone, every scanning satellite gone, fried in an instant by invisible pulses of quantum interference. Then the blackout spread, and entire security grids died before alarms could be raised. And then the sky opened. Human warships descended like falling blades. Railguns fired with pinpoint precision, erasing turrets before they moved. Orbital cannons turned to molten wreckage before a single shot left their barrels. Dropships deployed at terminal velocity, smashing through what remained of the defenses like meteors. And from those ships came the Phantom Division. They were Wraiths figures wrapped in adaptive exo-armor, their movements fluid and unnatural. Varma led them through the burning corridors of the Fortress Command, towers slicing through guards with terrifying efficiency. Within minutes it was over. No survivors, no prisoners. Only a single message carved into the command center's scorched walls in an Earth language no alien had ever learned to read. We remember, on the Council's capital world of Vera Prime, the ruling chamber erupted in chaos. Holograms displayed the smoking ruin of Teti-3. In real-time, senators screamed, generals issued contradictory orders. "This is impossible," snarled Senator Thor of the Jari Empire, his reptilian tail lashing in fury. Humanity was neutralized. Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar, ancient and proud, said nothing. He stared into the firestorm unfolding on the screen. Then at last he spoke. "They've returned." And in the silence that followed, the Council began to understand. The Exile had not broken humanity. It had forged them. The Council strikes back. Fear makes monsters out of empires. In the wake of the Tayeti massacre, the Galactic Council abandoned diplomacy. Panic turned to fury, and fury became war. Within days, Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar stood before a galaxy-wide broadcast, his image projected into the skies of 1,000 worlds. Humanity was given its chance, he roared, mandibles flaring. They were warned, they were exiled, they refused peace. Now they will be purged. The message echoed like a war drum. From Vera Prime to the Rimworld colonies, war factories thundered to life. Dockyards that hadn't seen activity in centuries began churning out dreadnoughts, destroyers, carriers. Tens of thousands of vessels were pulled from reserve fleets. Every species under the Council's rule contributed their best. What they assembled was a juggernaut, a galactic armada, a tide of fire and steel, a hammer to smash the memory of Earth from existence. They came fast, too fast. By the time the invasion fleet entered the outer solar system, the stars themselves seemed to darken under their mass. Scouts reported no resistance. No ships, no defensive satellites, just empty, silent void. Admiral Sirex of the Quarnai Void Legion scoffed. "They're cowards, already running." He was wrong, so very wrong. Far behind the illusion of emptiness, hidden among the dark matter folds and asteroid shadows, humanity waited. Inside the Warborn Command Center, Kane watched a live projection of the Council fleet's advance. Thousands of red markers moved across the map like bloodstains. "Are the traps in position?" he asked quietly. Commander Varma nodded, her fingers gliding over a hollow panel. All sectors armed. Phantom fleets in flux phase standby. AI battle network is synced. Good Kane said, let's begin. Then the void exploded. It started with silence and ended in chaos. Gravity mines tore through enemy formations like invisible blades, rupturing hulls from within. Entire wings of destroyers imploded before their crews understood what was happening. Next came the EMP clouds, nanite-infused storms that ate through shielding and fried systems mid-flight. Command vessels spun out of control. Comms went dead. Orders vanished into static. Then came the viruses, not digital quantum. Designed to hijack thought-linked command networks, Council admirals screamed as their own fleet turned against itself, turrets swiveling without command. Engines overloading, ships ramming allies in blind frenzy. And in that chaos, the real enemy arrived. The phantom fleets decloaked from subdimensional space, appearing inside Council formations, blinking into existence like ghosts from another reality. Their weapons didn't flash, they didn't roar. They whispered, but every blast found its mark. Precision strikes crippled dreadnoughts in seconds. The Black Armada surged from behind the asteroid belts, cutting through the scattered survivors like blades through fog. Legionnaires dropped from low-orbit insertion pods onto flagships, carving through corridors with brutal grace. The battle wasn't a conflict, it was a slaughter. By the time the sun rose on Earth again, it was over. 80% of this Council fleet had been annihilated. The rest fled in disarray. Their chain of command shattered, their morale bleeding into the void. In the ruins of the Quarnai flagship, a human message was broadcast on all frequencies. You wanted war, we remember. Back on Vera Prime, the chamber of the Council was silent. Senators stared at holograms of burning ships, of fractured fleets, of fallen heroes. We outnumbered them 5-1, hissed Senator Zor, eyes wide with disbelief, and they turned us to ash. No one replied. Finally, High Strategist Elvon, silent, until now, leaned forward. Her insectoid limbs twitched with cold calculation. They were never preparing to survive us, she said. They were preparing to end us. Supreme Chancellor Valktar's face twisted into rage. Then we crush them harder. We send the core fleets. No, Elvon interrupted. Her many black eyes stared ahead, unblinking. You don't understand. This wasn't desperation, this was a test. The Council had expected rebels. What they faced were predators, and the real war was just beginning. Apex predators. The galaxy bled. In the weeks following the Council's failed assault on the Sol system, human fleets began to move not in defense, but in pursuit. The Black Armada Phantom Division and Legionnaires spread outward in a coordinated assault unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They weren't conquering, they weren't liberating, they were erasing. World after world fell without warning. Not to armies, not to sieges, but to precision and terror. On Kvara Prime, capital of the Vornathi Empire, the ruling family awoke to silence. The planetary defense grid was disabled. Security forces found their weapons offline, comms jammed, targeting arrays scrambled. By dawn, their palace lay in ruin. No alarms had sounded, no ships had been seen. Only shadows moved in the footage, figures in black armor masks without faces. The entire royal bloodline was gone. Every genetic registry deleted, as if they had never existed. On Draknar 4, the warlords of the Jari Empire gathered to rally what remained of their military might. Their capital city lit up with war banners and last rites. That night, the city vanished. No bombardment, no invasion. A single blast from orbit compressed gravitic resonance. The planet's surface folded inward. Everything died instantly, and the world fell silent. Council news networks began referring to the events as the Dark Sweep, but the public had already given it a simpler name, the Human Storm. In the shadows of these falling empires, those who once mocked Earth now whispered their name in dread. There was no pattern, no diplomacy, no demands. Only a recurring message found etched in ruin, scrawled in fire, or carved into the bones of the fallen. We remember. In the Council chambers, despair deepened. Reports flooded in entire star systems. Gone dark, trade routes severed by invisible hands. Elite generals disappearing overnight. Holograms of screaming officers filled the command decks of broken fleets. High Strategist Elvon watched it all in silence. She studied each engagement, each attack, each absence, and in that data she saw the truth. They're not using brute force, she whispered to herself. They're using understanding. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war, they were rewriting it. Every tactic was asymmetrical, every movement deceptive. They never struck twice the same way. They adapted faster than any simulation could predict. Their AI networks were self-evolving. predictive and fully autonomous in battle theaters. And worst of all, they showed no intention of stopping. On Earth, the War-born Council gathered in silence. They no longer argued. There were no more debates, only decisions. General Kane stood at the head of the room, his expression carved from ice around him. Admiral Nix, her arms folded tight. Asha Varma, her synthetic eyes flickering with silent calculations. And Legote, Orion, commander of the Revenant Corps, standing like a statue of death, given purpose. The Council is on the brink, Nix reported. They've lost more than half their core fleets. At least 6 major empires are in collapse. Varma nodded. Survivors are scattering into deep space. Resistance is splintered. Kane looked up, and the rest. They're hiding, Orion growled, his voice deep and hard. The strong ones, the smart ones. But we'll find them. Kane said nothing for a moment. Then he spoke the words no one dared say aloud. They thought we were a prey. His fist clenched. They were wrong. Back in the deepest corners of Council-controlled space, fear turned to desperation. Entire species, once proud, now begged for surrender. Some offered tribute, others sent envoys. Humanity answered none. On the smoldering remains of those, a Council manufacturing world, a final message was found, transmitted seconds before its core ignited. We gave you exile, you gave us silence, now we give you memory. By the end of the cycle, the Council's map of the galaxy was a graveyard. Redacted, corrupted, meaningless. The Predator had come and it wore the face of humanity. Shadows fall on Vera Prime. They said Vera Prime was untouchable. The capital jewel of the Galactic Council, seat of its power for millennia, a planet built as both fortress and throne. Entire continents were dedicated to military installations. Orbital defense rings circled its atmosphere like iron halos. 1,000 fleets were stationed within reach. They believed it could never fall. They believed wrong. From the void beyond the star system, the Nemesis emerged, leading the Black Armada. Its blackened hull absorbed starlight and dread alike. Admiral Nix stood on the bridge, her silver eyes reflecting rows of targeting data. Behind her, the silence of her command crew crackled with intensity. Stealth drives holding no detection, a tactical officer whispered. Nix gave a slight nod. Then we begin. In orbit above Vera Prime, the first tremor went unnoticed. A minor glitch in sensor arrays, a brief flicker in satellite comms. Nothing unusual until it all went dark. In an instant, every surveillance satellite failed, defense systems rebooted, then froze, planetary shields attempted to cycle, and collapsed. From the far side of the moon, the Black Armada moved. Stealth cruisers phased into real space at impossible angles, bypassing defense lines. Phantom Division drop pods launched like falling stars, slicing through the atmosphere in total silence. On the surface, cities stirred in confusion, panic followed. And then came fire. The first strike hit Central Command, an orbital cannon platform disintegrated in mid-sentence during a Council broadcast. A moment later, shockwaves echoed across the capital. Human warships rained destruction in perfect synchrony. Towers crumbled. Defense silos vaporized before they could unlock. In the air, Legionnaire drop squads deployed through phasing corridors, materializing inside hardened bunkers and strongholds. Inside the Grand Council Hall, alarms screamed. "We are under attack on Vera Prime," one aide shrieked. Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar slammed his fist against the war table. "Deploy the grid. Full defense protocols." "It's too late," a general shouted. "They're already inside." Security doors slammed shut. Gunfire erupted. Figures cloaked in adaptive armor burst into the war room. Silent, precise, unstoppable. Revenant operatives moved like specters, cutting down senators and tacticians in seconds. The Chamber of Governance, once the heart of the galaxy's rule, became a slaughterhouse. Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar staggered backward, blood dripping from a wound in his side. As he collapsed, a shadow loomed over him, General Elias Kane. He knelt beside the dying chancellor, eyes cold, unblinking. "You should have finished the job when you had the chance," Kane said. Without emotion, he raised his sidearm and ended Vokhtar's life. Above from orbit, Vera Prime's burning cities lit the clouds below. Entire districts crumbled beneath precision orbital strikes. The once proud towers of the ruling elite now toppled like sandcastles. From every broadcast relay, a final message played on loop. This was never vengeance. This was memory. We remember. When the smoke cleared, the capital was no more. Council survivors, if any, scattered to the stars. Entire empires crumbled overnight. Worlds surrendered before a single shot was fired. Species that had once spoken in arrogance now spoke only in whispers. On Earth, Kane returned to the Warborn Command Center. He stood in silence before a hologram of Vera Prime, now labeled as cleansed. Behind him, Admiral Nix and Asha Varma approached. "They'll try to rebuild," Varma said. "They'll try to hide," Nix added. Kane didn't respond at first. Then he whispered, "Let them run. We'll find them." He turned his face cast in steel and shadow. "We're not done yet." The whisper beyond the stars. The stars whispered again. But this time humanity was listening. Weeks after the fall of Vera Prime, something changed in the void. Not a threat, not an enemy fleet, something deeper, quieter, something ancient. It began as a pulse, a faint rhythm on forgotten frequencies, a low thrum vibrating through hyperspace, undetectable to most, but not to humanity. On Draxus 4, the new capital of the human dominion, the signal echoed across command networks. No source, no coordinates, no language. But still, every human who heard it understood. You are not the first. In the command tower of the Horizon's End, the Dominion's most powerful flagship, General Elias Kane, stood at the edge of a war table, arms crossed. The message repeated in the air around him, distorted yet undeniable. Admiral Nix leaned forward, reviewing the waveform. "This isn't Council tech, not even close. No known race uses this sub-frequency range. Not even the archives," Kane asked. Asha Varma shook her head. Her cybernetic eyes glowed as they streamed through ancient council, data encryption libraries, even outlawed records from before the ban. Nothing, she said, but it's not random. It's layered. It's not just a transmission. It's an invitation. Kane's expression didn't change, but something in his voice grew colder. "Then someone is expecting us." A task force was formed, Spearhead Fleet, an elite detachment of the Dominion's finest warships. At its center, the Iron Vow, a battleship forged from the remnants of Earth's last asteroid fortress. Around it, stealth frigates, recon cruisers, and Phantom Division commandos. Their destination lay beyond known space, past the old rim, through the uncharted gulf, where even council maps marked only darkness. For weeks, the fleet traveled deeper into nothingness. Star after dead star systems long collapsed, echoes of civilizations erased by time, but always the signal grew stronger. Until they reached it, a planet, or what was left of one, shattered, floating in fragments, covered in scars too vast to be from war. This place had been broken on a cosmic scale. Asha scanned the ruins, her neural interface blinked with static. "There's something beneath the surface," she whispered, still alive. In the silence, Kane gave a single order. "Send teams, I want answers." The Phantom Division descended onto the largest shard. Beneath the surface, they found the impossible, a city entombed in obsidian and steel. Glyphs pulsed faint green along every surface, patterns that responded to thought and proximity. In the heart of the ruins stood a monolith, a tower of dark crystals stretching high into the fractured sky. It hummed with energy that bent light around it. As the soldiers approached, the signal changed. It spoke. "You are not the first," it said again. "We watched others rise, we watched others fall. You believe you have conquered, but you are only the next chapter." Then without warning came the sound no one expected. Laughter, deep, hollow, inhuman. On the bridge of the Iron Vow, alarms screamed. "Spatial rupture," a technician shouted. "Something's coming through, not FTL, not hyperspace, something else." Outside the observation base, space itself tore. A wound in the fabric of reality opened, and from it, they came. Not ships, not exactly. Black silhouettes shifting like smoke underwater. No engines, no exhaust, no emissions. Just presence. Dozens, then hundreds. They drifted, silent, scanning. "Try hailing." Nick said no response. Kane stared at them, jaw tight. "They're not here to talk." Then the monolith spoke one last time. "You were warned." The black shapes turned and vanished. Not into space, not through jumps. They simply ceased to be seen. Moments later, the Iron Vow's sensors lit up. "New contact, coordinates, Omega-4 colony." "Wait, they're already there." On Omega-4, a fortress world built to repel invasions, planetary defenses stood ready. Shields flared turrets. Powered-up commanders screamed orders. But it didn't matter. The black ships appeared inside the shield perimeter. Inside bunkers, inside control towers. Not phased in, not transported. Inserted. Wherever they passed, matter ceased to exist, walls crumbled. Mid-frame people vanished mid-sentence. In less than 3 minutes, Omega-4 was gone. No explosion, no wreckage, just silence. Back aboard the Iron Vow, the last transmission from the colony played once. "We remember," and in that moment, humanity finally realized they hadn't discovered a signal. They had triggered a tomb, and the forgotten had awoken. When reality fails, the Dominion had never lost a war. From the ashes of exile, humanity had crushed empires, erased legacies, and carved their dominion across the stars with ruthless precision. But now, standing before the enemy that erased Omega-4 without firing a shot, they saw something they hadn't faced in centuries. Powerless fear. Admiral Nix assembled 6 battle groups at Draxus 7, a heavily fortified world, and humanity's last major staging point in the outer sectors. Planetary shields were raised, orbital batteries armed, legionnaires prepped for full-spectrum engagement. This time humanity was ready, or so they believed. The Iron Vow hovered above the surface like a steel god weapon. Banks locked sensors scouring space. And then nothing. Not a warp signature, not a hyperspace wake, no warning. The black ships simply appeared. "They're here," whispered the sensor officer. No breach, no trace, just instant presence. Nix stood tall, her voice steady. Fire at will. The void exploded. Every weapon humanity possessed, railguns, quantum lances, phasic torpedoes unleashed in coordinated fury. The sky became a kaleidoscope of destruction. And yet, every beam passed through the enemy. Every missile detonated behind empty silhouettes. Every strike hit nothing. The black ships remained unmoved. Then they responded, not with missiles, not with lasers, with absence. A wave of darkness swept through the human fleets. Ships disintegrated not from heat or force, but as if their atoms simply decided to stop existing. Crew members vanished mid-command. Hulls folded in on themselves like paper in fire. The Iron Vow trembled. Shields are collapsing, sections 3 through 7 gone, no impact registered. Something's inside the mainframe, it's rewriting physics. Admiral Nix issued the final order. Retreat all surviving units, fall back to Earth, perimeter down. Only 10% of the fleet escaped. Back on Draxus 4, Supreme Executive Kane stood in the Warborn Command Center, watching the death toll rise in silence. Beside him, Asha Varma sifted through the wreckage of data logs patterns, anything that made sense. "There's no countermeasure," she finally said. "Nothing we have, nothing the Council had, nothing works. Every known weapon tactic model, they all fail." Kane didn't blink. "Then we try what's unknown." Varma hesitated. "We don't even understand what they are, Elias. They don't follow time-space causality." She paused, voice low. "They aren't ships, they're erasers." The room fell into silence. Then Kane spoke, voice cold steel. "Then we give them something that cannot be erased." Across the Dominion war councils gathered in desperation, names began circulating through the classified channels, fragments from ancient council legends. The forgotten, entities erased from history not by accident or neglect, but by force. Asha's data models showed the truth no one wanted to hear. The forgotten didn't lose their war. They ended it. They erased every trace of their enemies, every word, every memory, every proof that resistance had ever existed. And now humanity was next. But humanity did not survive centuries of exile by surrendering. In the deepest vaults of the Warborn Nexus, Kane authorized the final directive. A project older than even the Black Armada, a plan never meant to win, only to endure. They called it Project Eternal Flame, a final act of defiance. The plan was not to destroy the forgotten. That was impossible. The plan was to make humanity unforgettable. Using the Dominion's most advanced quantum technology, fusion AI, and remnants of the monolith's signal structure, Earth scientists built a device to imprint humanity's existence into the very fabric of space-time. A resonance cascade broadcasting human thought, memory, identity, across dimensions, timelines, even after annihilation. If humanity was going to die, it would burn so bright that the universe itself would carry its ghost. The forgotten advanced. Earth stood as the final bastion. The Black Armada regrouped for a last stand around the Sol system. Phantom Division operatives seeded cascade devices across every orbital body. Mars, Titan, Europa, the asteroid belt, even the rings of Saturn. On the bridge of the horizon's end, Kane stood flanked by Nix and Varma. "Everything's in place," Nix said. "They're here," Varma whispered. "I can feel it." Kane gave one final nod, then activate it. The devices detonated, but there was no explosion. Only light, blinding infinite, beautiful. The stars seemed to scream as reality twisted. Waves of quantum resonance spread from Earth like a ripple across a black ocean. The forgotten paused. For the first time they hesitated. And then they struck. The Earth vanished, the Warborn command, the horizon's end. Every soldier, every ship, every whisper of human presence was wiped away in a breath. But the signal remained, a burn in space-time, a stain on existence, a truth no power could erase. The forgotten won the war, but humanity won eternity. The flame that cannot be erased. The stars were quiet again. But the silence was different this time. It remembered. In the wake of Earth's annihilation, the galaxy stood still. The great world was gone, its continents vaporized, its oceans boiled into memory, its cities reduced to dust, drifting in orbit. There was no wreckage, no bodies. Only an absence so complete it left an ache in the very fabric of reality. But still the signal pulsed, invisible, indestructible, unyielding. A whisper that echoed through space and time. We were here. The forgotten withdrew. No one knew why. Perhaps their purpose was complete. Perhaps they recognized for the first time something they could not unmake. Perhaps they simply grew afraid. They vanished as swiftly as they had come, folding back into the shadows of unspace, leaving only ruins and fear behind. And through the ruins came memory. In the centuries that followed, the galaxy reshaped itself. New alliances formed. Broken species crawled from hiding, terrified of drawing attention, yet compelled by what remained of the flame humanity had lit. The ruins of Vera Prime, still radioactive, were now a monument. On its blackened soil, someone had carved the words, "Let no empire forget." In distant systems, the remnants of the Revenant core clones agents. Data ghosts whispered through digital networks, fragments of Kane's speeches, recordings of Nix's last orders, Asha Varma's final quantum transmission looping endlessly. We burned so they will never forget us. The signal reached farther than anyone expected. It passed through the shattered council archives, corrupting erasure protocols. It infected deep space listening posts once tuned to chart comets, now playing fragments of Terran music. In the nebulae where time itself curled like smoke, a message remained encoded in cosmic microwave radiation. They tried to erase us. We became the memory instead. And so it was that humanity in death achieved what no living species had: immortality. On the edge of known, space explorers from the Hyven Syndicate, centuries removed from the war, stumbled upon the shattered world where the first monolith had awakened. The planet was dead, and yet beneath its crust, a single structure remained. The monolith, untouched, unweathered, eternal. As their scans reached it, it responded with the same signal. But this time it said more. You are not the first, but one was different, one burned, and now I remember too. The explorers left in silence, and across their homeworld, monuments were raised not to kings or gods, but to a species long gone, one whose fire could not be extinguished. And beyond that, beyond the rim, beyond where stars still formed and died in silence, something watched. It had no name, no shape, only purpose. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had consumed the dreams of the arrogant, the hopeful, the cruel. But now it paused. It paused because one memory remained: a defiant species, a blue planet, a flame that refused to die. And that pause, that hesitation, was victory. In the digital core of an unmarked satellite orbiting the ruins of Earth, a backup AI stirred. It had no consciousness, only protocol. But as the signal passed through its framework, it executed one final task, one last directive from Kane himself. It sent a message not to the stars, not to the galaxy, but to anyone who would one day rise. We were human. We were cast into the void. We fought not for conquest, but for memory. If you hear this, know this truth. We were never erased. We became the flame. And the stars carried it forever.